Not again. How did I let this happen again? You didn't. All you did was let someone new into your life. Yeah, sure, that's a risk, but it's a worthy one. You have to believe that you have the early detection system to see it when it's there. On this channel, we talk about how people largely manage their existing narcissistic relationships, but I also believe there needs to be more attention on how to avoid getting into new ones. This is a concept I call gatekeeping. And by and large, the people who keep flowing into new narcissistic relationships are often those who do not fully understand not only narcissism, but trauma bonding. And I say this as someone who continues to get ensnared by narcissists. I got to tell you, I'm getting quicker on the draw at getting them out. And I, though, have to say, in trying to avoid narcissists, I admittedly am more isolated than I ever have been. Narcissism is seemingly more and more observed in adults, I'm encountering at least, so I just have really tall walls these days. Keeping new narcissistic people out of your life is difficult. It means a willingness to recognize red flags as early as possible, to maintain hefty boundaries until trust is slowly earned, to not justify bad behavior or be pressured to justify it by enablers and other people who tell you to just give them another chance. We all make mistakes. Being a gatekeeper means feeling cut off, cynical, and to be prepared for people to call you out as closed off, unkind, and untrusting. It means literally going against the grain of what you want to do, especially if you are empathic, and in essence, you are trading one discomfort for another. You are either tolerating the discomfort of enduring the narcissist's manipulations and entitlement and BS, or you are tolerating the discomfort of swimming away from your trauma bonds and doing things that don't just sort of feel like they come naturally. Neither is easy. It takes time and practice to set a boundary, to tolerate the discomfort, and then reflect after the fact that you took the better path. New narcissistic people can enter your life in many ways. Workplace relationships, maybe meeting people through settings like a child's school, your religious community, or even meeting someone at a party or gathering. Obviously, if you are dating, there are numerous cracks in the wall where a new narcissist can enter as well. But there is another way that narcissistic people enter your life that we could almost view as a very unguarded and secret backdoor that you're not paying attention to. That is other people. Other people you know can become the bridge to toxic people. This is the story I see play out for so many survivors. They go through narcissistic abuse. They really commit to the work to avoid ongoing narcissistic abuse. They heal. They recover. They slowly trust their instincts. They may still have in their life, obviously, friends or family members they trust. And through these trusted people, they get introduced to new people through them. When other people are telling you, hey, I have this amazing friend, or I know this cool person, or this person I know does stuff that's related to what you do, and you could learn from each other. You two should get together because I think you'd have an amazing collaboration. I cannot tell you how many times that this has tripped people up and gotten them back into the narcissistic mud again. That empathic part of you that obviously trusts your friend and wants to believe your friend has a good person for you to meet. That part of you may say, sure, I'll meet your friend or this cool person you know, but alas, if your friend is not as schooled in narcissism and high conflict personalities as you are, they may just not have a good eye. Also, if you are in the early phases of healing from narcissistic abuse, you are still trying to unstick your trauma bonds, and as a result, you may be vulnerable too. And not only may your friend not get it, your radar may still be getting dusted off. This scenario
of other people being a bridge to toxic people has actually been a primary reason for several narcissistic relationships or encounters even I personally have had. It's interesting to me how many people out there derive their identity from being connectors. Methinks maybe they've read a little too much Malcolm Gladwell. They have an almost obsessive zeal to be networks and introduce people and create collaborations and friendships. Maybe in some cases they're busybodies. Sometimes they do right by you, but sometimes they can feel like annoying matchmakers. Instead of bringing people together to date, they think they are doing you a favor by introducing you to a new collaborator or a person who lives in your neighborhood. Again, sometimes they're very well intended. However, the difficulty is these connectors in your world. I don't know, for some reason, perhaps they may have a lovely relationship with person A. Maybe that's because person A is getting something or benefiting somehow from your friend. But person A is actually not very nice. So when person A gets connected with you, and there isn't much benefit there for person A, you may get a far more toxic version. In fact, that person A may just agree to meet you to keep your mutual friend happy. The disappointing part can be how defensive some connectors can be, the bridges to these narcissists, how defensive they become. Things like, I didn't know, I'm so sorry, I thought I was doing you a favor. It's a little bit manipulative, by the way. And listen, and not everyone in your life who is a narcissistic person bridge is wanting to cause you problems. In fact, I would argue almost none of them are. It just so happens that they want to connect you to someone in a really well-intended way, but they only see a slice of the person. Your friend may truly believe they are doing a good thing. The challenge is that your guard may be down when this person gets introduced to you by your friend. And then you get to the point that I am now at, where I am very slow to warm up with new people. It's not a nice way to go through life, but it's a lot safer than the way I've been living. Optimistic, cheerful, very positive friends are often the bridge to new narcissistic people in your life. They just don't see it. I am not going to be so uncharitable as to call them enablers per se. I just really don't think they see it. They think they're doing something good, and they truly think that they're doing you a favor. Until you've been through narcissistic abuse, I don't know that people ever fully get it. And so the optimistic folks often think they're doing you a favor with these introductions. In several experiences, I have to say, more often than not when this happens to people, the introduction is professional. One professional may say, hey, I know someone who could help you get financing or who could help you brand your concept or give you guidance. Again, there should be walls and radar need to be up, whether a friend made the introduction or not. A red flag is a red flag. To say, when this kind of thing has happened to me, this friend of a friend I got introduced to will often charge far more for their services than others who would do something similar. So even at the fee basis, if you do get introduced through a friend, make sure you get multiple bids if this is for a paid service, because it may very well be this friend of a friend may overcharge you. Every human relationship has a blind spot and a piece that doesn't fit in the relationship. We just work around it. Even some of the people I love most in the world, the work is for me to be honest with myself about the piece that doesn't fit, even with people I adore. We may not fit around political ideology. It may be a quirk that one of us has. It may be that their values deviate from mine. It may be that we simply eat in completely different ways. It may be many things, and we don't fit perfectly. I always try to ensure in my most dear relationships that there is the important stuff, the empathy, the compassion, the love, kindness, respect. And when that is there, I can tolerate eating the sugarless cake that they've made for me. But those blind spots mean that someone they think is great and you got to meet this person may actually be unhealthy or narcissistic. It takes a minute to say, this person I love, we still view the world differently. It means that with some of my friends, I sometimes skip their parties. I adore the friend. I don't really like their friends. It means that with some of my friends, I politely nod when they offer up a person that they think would be so great for me to talk with, but then I sort of forget to follow up on the contact. It means that I have friends who want me to read a book or a website or watch some video that I know is in conflict with what would help me, and I thank them, and I probably take a pass. The work is getting to know ourselves. We don't need to disrespect these friends and say, I think all of your friends are all petty, vapid people, but we can say, I love you so much. I need to take a pass on this event, but let's talk soon, and then actually follow up with them. We have to pay attention to these nuances because once you have been through narcissistic abuse, your system isn't designed to go through it again. It's like breaking a leg twice. The second break is going to be far worse, or having a second heart attack. Your heart is much weaker, and you may not survive. So survivors need to protect themselves. Just because someone you like says that they have a person that you have to meet, it doesn't mean it will be safe. You have to be as guarded, open-eyed, aware, and red flag spotting as if this was a stranger. And always honor your gut and push back on that uncomfortable, empathic thing of not wanting to let your friend down. You do you first. As I said, I have experienced this a fair amount in the last few years. People I trusted bringing some really toxic people into my life. And I actually had to give myself a good look in the mirror and remember that it really is the story of the 5 blind men and the elephant. You know, when 5 blind men touch the elephant and they all think it's different things. We all experience and perceive different things in people and experience them differently. And frankly, if you haven't been through narcissistic abuse, you don't fully get it. Healing, a big part of healing, is about gatekeeping. No matter who's introducing you to a new person, always remember that.
You survive a really painful adult narcissistic relationship. The classical example would be with like a partner. You go through all the phases of narcissistic abuse, love bombing and the devaluing, discarding, all of that. Maybe you even had to go through a painful divorce, custody battle, or just have to tolerate the smear campaign, flying, monkeyed mess that is the breakup. So you're so confused by all this, you watch the videos, you watch a channel such as this, you read the books, you maybe even get therapy. You learn about gaslighting, you learn about future faking, you get a whole new vocabulary. You do a deeper dive, you recognize, gosh, this was even in my family of origin. Gosh, now that I recognize this is my mom. And I've actually let a lot of friends walk all over me, and I do have a tendency to blame myself for everything that happens. So you decide, I'm not going to have a relationship for a while. You take a break, you work on yourself, and you think, okay, I get this. I got this, red flags, I get that. I got to pay attention. Don't talk myself out of the red flags. I got to move at a pace that feels right to me. I learned how to firewall and gray rock and set boundaries. I've cleaned up all the toxic people. I'm good. I got this. And then, as you heal, as you recover, you're out in the world and you meet someone. You're attracted, and they're attracted to you. Your head is spinning. Oh my gosh, they're paying for this dinner, and it kind of was a little expensive. Is that love bombing? Or, ooh, they texted me good night. Is that okay? You even feel like you can't trust your instincts because of what you've been through. Things go on from there. A few dates, really good. Then real red flags start to pop up. Some entitled behavior here. They gaslight you a few times. They get aggravated at you about something, lose patience. They get really sensitive about some simple feedback you gave them. Maybe you even see more of a smoking gun, like they really lied about something, like another relationship they're having. You learn quicker this time. You may even get out quicker. You do all the right things this time. You don't spend years in it. You barely spend weeks. You set a boundary. You end it all earlier. Maybe they even go on a text attack and tell you that you're judgmental and didn't give them a chance. Maybe still you cut them off. Good job. Well done. But then, even if you get it right like that, there is this sense of dread. A dread you felt in this new relationship as soon as the red flags popped up and you were like, oh no, not again. It's this sentiment that people have been sharing with me. Not again. This is something that more and more survivors of narcissistic abuse have been sharing with me in sort of the recovery landscape. First of all, for any survivor of narcissistic abuse to be willing to throw their hat back out there and give love and life another chance, as far as I'm concerned, that's damned heroic, and I applaud the courage. But that said, people spend months and years ruminating about their past narcissistic relationship. How did I miss it? Why did I justify it? How could I have been so foolish? And vow to never do it again. To try again is like getting to take an exam again. You think like, well, this time I kind of know the answers. I'll see it. But the heartbreak is that even when a person can say, yep, this time I saw it early and I detected it early and I got out, there is that moment of dread where you're like, I can't believe this, not again. It may not be entering into a new relationship. It may be meeting a new colleague at work. It may be a new friendship. It may even be a relatively passing acquaintance. Because now you understand these relationships, right? You're watching this damn channel. I hope you've learned something here. And then it hits you, and then it happens to you again, and then you're like, oh my gosh, not again. It's like a bigger existential tidal wave. More and more people are saying to me, it's gotta be me. It's gotta be me. How is it that I'm the one who's meeting more and more toxic and narcissistic people? It can't be everyone else. So it seems like maybe it's me. Sadly, it's not you. This phenomenon now is really a thing. And this not again moment is the catalyst. The moment when we say, damn, a fair amount of people really suck. Here's the thing, not all people suck. All of us. I know I'm blessed. I have good people. I'm blessed with some really good people in my life, and they are precious to me, and I hope you have those people too, at least one. I also know my life is also peppered with some raging, difficult, narcissistic people, and I figure out how to work around them because not all of them are easily removable. But the not again of it all, it keeps happening to all of us. And it sucks because we feel like this whole phenomenon in the world at large is turning all of us into permanent cynics. Listen, with this narcissism thing, social media and the internet have made all of this exponentially worse. Cruel social media comments, cruel emails, cruel comments. Cruelty is the work of cowards. Listen, everyone's a badass from behind a keyboard. Even when we see the internet trolling stuff for what it is, it still takes a toll on us. All of this toxicity, it leaves us sad, hopeless, bereft, wondering, what happens? What happens if all of these toxic, difficult people hit critical mass? The fact is, folks, I think we're getting there. But this is where that part about not personalizing it becomes really important. When people encounter new toxic people, there is that moment when the wind goes out of your sails, the air comes out of your lungs, and you say, not again. Are you kidding me? Here we go again. You start looking for the exits. You get out your bricks and you start reinforcing your boundaries and your walls, and you make them taller and thicker than they were before. The firewalling and the gray rocking and the tentativeness all start anew. And after that, again, we become more cautious. And there's a point when the cautiousness on top of more cautiousness, the not again on top of the not again, leaves us feeling closed off, isolated, and suspicious. And none of those feels particularly good either. The whole not again of it can also lead us to a lot of self-blame. Not again. How did I let this happen again? You didn't. All you did was let someone new into your life. Yeah, sure, that's a risk, but it's a worthy one. You have to believe that you have the early detection system to see it when it's there. and then act on it. Listen, gang, I still make mistakes. I still get played. All of us do. And getting played may actually be a better alternative than never talking to anyone again. Am I cautious? You better believe it, and now more than ever. And I very rarely now let any new people into my life in any significant manner anymore. That's my journey. But the not again of it all, like, not again, not another toxic person. It's like our new normal. It can be demoralizing. It can leave people believing that they may never fall in love again. It can leave people feeling lonely. But do not let the not again lead you to say, well, everybody else can't be toxic. It has to all be me. And then because of that, you start letting difficult people into your life with abandon, and you ignore the red flags, and you don't set boundaries and start the whole process of narcissistic relationships again. No, 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 no. You don't want to open up the floodgates. Many people get into narcissistic relationships because of a pressure from outside of them. For example, all families are supposed to stick together, which is why you keep a toxic family member around. Oh, you're 35. You sure you better get married? Or this is a great job. Nobody leaves this place. With those sorts of external pressures, people double down, ignore the red flags, blame themselves, and justify, make excuses, and then get stuck. We all know all of the no's we should have said before, the boundaries we could have erected, but we felt the societal pressure to stick it out. The not again actually has been there for a long time. But most people didn't know what narcissism is, so they didn't even know what to call these patterns in their life. I get that the not again of it all feels awful, but can we sort of edit the story a little bit and see it as, instead of not again, say it as, oh, now I see it. Give you a stupid example. I had this experience in algebra class in 10th grade. I really didn't get it. I was sick, I didn't get it. And then I got it. And I said, oh, now I see it. And from there on in, it was a formula. Algebra was never scary again. And that's really what all of these detections and red flags and all of that are. It's a formula. Listen, I hate that people could be boiled down to a formula, but here it is. So your hard work, your willingness to do the deep dive, your painful backstory, they're all lessons. You integrated these lessons, and now you can allow yourself to be wise, even if that means facing up to a painful recognition about another person. But instead of saying, oh, not again, you can say, oh, I see it. And calmly, you can be resolute, know that you get it, know that you are worthy of not being gaslighted, that you're worthy of being valued, of being seen, of being cherished. And that does mean setting boundaries or walking away when those conditions are not true. That lesson, that new wisdom, it's really worth the not again. And then turning it into the calm, graceful wisdom and the awareness of getting it, seeing it, and protecting yourself. Of being able to say, now I see it, and gently stepping back. In fact, there, instead of not again and all the sadness there, that's actually a good and empowering feeling. And the fact is, you deserve no less. Lots of people are out there saying, not again, not again. Again, try this. Just try saying like, now I see it. And give yourself permission to step back.
So the proverb we're going to be taking on is, a wise man doesn't fall down the same hill twice. I love this proverb, but I also don't love this proverb, so let's sort of take it both ways. This proverb, a wise man doesn't fall down the same hill twice, is an African proverb. When I read it initially, I paused because it reminded me precisely just how complicated healing from narcissistic abuse really is, and more importantly, many of the fears that people encounter as they heal. As I see it, and I'm kind of oversimplifying it a little bit, but there are two pathways there are two pathways a person can take after a person gets harmed by a narcissist and gets out of the relationship. Okay, so they get out of the relationship. Pathway one is a person gets out of the relationship. They don't quite understand what happened to them in the relationship. They knew it was a mess and they knew it was a bad relationship, but they never quite learn what narcissism is. They're angry when they get out of the relationship and they can't believe someone did to them what happened in that relationship, or the person leaves the relationship and they're just hurt, and maybe they even wonder what's wrong with they themselves. But they still don't understand narcissism. And as a result, the cycle is very likely to happen again after the person gets out of that one narcissistic relationship, likely to happen again with other people they meet or other people in their lives. Then there's pathway 2. In pathway 2, a person gets out of the relationship and they learn everything they can about narcissistic abuse. They want to heal, but they are scared of other people, and especially scared of entering into another narcissistic relationship. These are people who are concerned that they will always be closed off and that they see narcissism everywhere in every person they encounter. These people in pathway 2, want to be the wise people who don't fall down the same hill twice, but as you can see in pathway 2, there's sometimes a risk of an overcorrection. The fact is that once you have been harmed, hurt, manipulated, and played by a narcissistic person, you feel you can never trust again, and the world can look like a very dangerous place. It is critical that you know about it. We know that the narcissistic and antagonistic folks out there have, I don't know, some kind of radar or something. They really seem to be able to find the people who will be most receptive to them. It's as though narcissistic people have a unique ability to smell out empathy and compassion and the people who are willing to give them second chances. And then, like a spider, they're able to build a web and bam, they catch these very kind people often in our midst. So it's a really difficult balancing act of how can you retain compassion and empathy and at the same time not be a narcissist magnet. So basically, it goes to the proverb, how can you avoid falling down the damned hill again? So if you don't know at the time you're in or leaving a narcissistic relationship, if you don't know what it is and just blame yourself and don't see the narcissism of it all, I can all but guarantee it's going to happen again, especially because of trauma bonding and almost the silent pull of these dangerous people. Some people, when they come out of narcissistic relationships, I must say in some cases I've seen it, it's quite sad, they just shut down forever. They never enter into another relationship, and they feel that it is the safest way to stay out of harm's way is just to not get close to anyone ever again. This is avoidance behavior, and it's a very common trauma response. I truly believe that people in this situation, over time, may build the fortress around them, but perhaps with therapy and with some good supports around them, they may slowly over time remove a few bricks from the fortress wall and maybe let people in a little further. This is a very personal process, and it has to move at a pace that allows a person to feel safe, but hopefully happens so a person then is also not always cut off from the world and the supports that they may be able to cultivate in the world. It's a balancing act. There is this shame experience that people have after they go through a narcissistic relationship. People who go through narcissistic relationships, they feel foolish. They feel that anyone else would have seen this narcissist coming from 100 miles. Many people who've been through narcissistic relationships don't want to be even more judged by the world, so they will often isolate. In fact, a pattern that we often see in trauma bonding is the tendency to not tell other people about how bad the relationship is. That means then the relationship can sustain and persist because there is no outside awareness or accountability. And this also, though, avoids the shame for the other person in the narcissistic relationship. This shame can mean that people are so confused when they move forward and are afraid of making the same mistake again. of people saying, oh, there they go again. There you are. Gosh, you really do have a bad picker. You're good at picking those narcissists, which is in essence victim blaming, blaming the person who got into this relationship rather than really addressing the issue with the narcissist who was the one abusing them. I gotta tell you, I really am getting sick and tired and actually quite angry at people for blaming people for choosing badly. That's like blaming people for being burglarized because they didn't lock their door one time. Okay, you didn't lock your damn door, but that wasn't permission for someone to come into your house and take your stuff. Be angry at the burglar, not the poor person who didn't remember to lock their door. It's exactly the same with narcissism. Okay, you didn't see the red flags, but that wasn't effing permission for someone to come in and gaslight and invalidate and manipulate. And yet, therapists and friends and family and court and mediators will often blame the person in that narcissistic relationship and say, well, how didn't you see it? Why didn't you get it? Why didn't you get out of it? Why not ask the question of how dare that narcissistic person behave that way? So let's go back to the proverb. And sorry for getting a bit worked up there, I'm having a day, but I agree and I disagree with the proverb. I don't think this is about wisdom, the idea of the wise man, right? I don't think this is about wisdom. I have met many very wise narcissistic abuse survivors who do get played again and again, including myself. They say, if the choice is to cut myself off from all people versus actually being in the world, well, I actually do want people in my life, so I guess they take the risk. So they fall down a few more hills. Maybe they fall down the hill again, not because they weren't wise, but because they were brave. It takes some real badass courage to put your heart out there again after you have been through narcissistic abuse, and to take the leap of faith to trust another person again. And yep, if you do that, you may very well fall down the hill again. I don't know, maybe the next time the hill will be shorter, or maybe there will be more people at the bottom of that hill to help you when you fall. But if you fall down the hill again, it's not that you are not wise, it's not that you are foolish, but perhaps because you are brave. We really need to break out of the habit of blaming and punishing people for experiencing abuse. It simply emboldens the abusers to just find their next victim and leaves the survivors feeling isolated, shamed, and silenced. Just like a proverb I talked about recently on a video about the idea of getting lost is to learn the way. I see this proverb as a bit of a riff on that, but I know personally, as a survivor of narcissistic abuse, I just keep falling down the hill. I notice that as I get older, the hills are getting a little bit shorter. I'm lucky. I have some more people in my life to help me dust off. But the formula for me is that I don't want to lose my empathy. I don't want to cut off from all people. I'll acknowledge I am far, far, far less trusting than before, and I allow very, very few people to get very close to me anymore. But I do still meet people, and I still do make mistakes. And I still make mistakes with the people who are narcissistic, who are still in my life. Maybe we could consider rewording this proverb and say something that, like, a wise person falls down shorter and shorter hills. Please remember that there is life after narcissistic abuse. And the wisdom of life is that hopefully we see the narcissist a little bit sooner. But after going through it, we don't lose our empathy and compassion, but rather we dole it out more wisely. We don't enable, we give ourselves permission to set boundaries, and we have self-compassion and self-forgiveness for when we do roll down the hill. We're going to talk about this idea that everybody talks about. I don't want to get into a narcissistic relationship. Tell me how to not get into one. It's the getting in's not the issue. The real issue with narcissistic relationships is the getting stuck. Because that's right, the whole thing, like tell us how to prevent this, right? Everybody out there wants to know, how can I tell if my new partner, this new person I know, how can I tell if they're narcissistic? How can I avoid getting into a narcissistic relationship? What are the biggest red flags? What are the questions I can ask? They're kind of the wrong questions because you're probably not going to be able to get there that quickly. The real issue is that this isn't about the getting in, right? We're never going to live in a world where charm and charisma are not alluring, nor are we ever going to live in a world where every child is protected from toxic and adverse problematic family systems. So people are going to have, just being in this world and what we value, in a way everyone is vulnerable to narcissistic relationships. Ultimately, the narcissistic folks are going to be attractive. So I don't really think it's realistic we're going to get ahead of this unless you really, really are willing to go against the tide and say, yep, nope, not going with the things that I was told are attractive. The getting stuck is the problem, though, and I've said that before on this channel. Lots of people also want to know, how long is a love bombing going to last? How long does it take to figure out if someone is narcissistic? After many years of doing this, I have to say that it takes someplace between 1 to 2 years to figure out if you're in a relationship with someone narcissistic. You often need that many toxic patterns to accumulate, that much data, that many bad examples without good ones to counter them. By 1 to 2 years, most people are clear. Doesn't mean everyone leaves at that point. And listen, 1 to 2 years is not a short amount of time. And many people feel angry and foolish about taking that long, but that's what it seems to take. There may be enough that you like about this person, that the idea of stepping away too soon and the possible regret that you don't have enough warning signs, enough invalidating experiences to confidently base this decision on can keep people sticking around to get enough of the intel to make a decision, not to mention that you might enjoy some of the time you're spending with this person. Getting stuck is tough, especially once there are practical ties that bind you. Extracting from narcissistic relationships is very difficult. And when you throw in the invisible locks and chains of trauma bonds, that can feel almost impossible to shed. It's less about red flags than it is about figuring out how to step back from a situation that might feel good or even familiar, but in the long term is going to take a toll on your health. All of this is made more complicated if you do have a past history of trauma bonding. So then the inconsistency and the invalidating may foster that complicated tie and connection that is made worse by all of the up and down and the chaos and the good and the good and the bad. And you hold on to that roller coaster until you get to the point where it is no longer a roller coaster. It's just a really problematic train that you're still struggling to get off of. So more and more time passes, and while you're gathering this data and information and watching the patterns, and in some cases, you may not even recognize that it's an issue. For example, if you don't know what narcissism is, or perhaps if the way the relationship is going is consistent with what you grew up with, and it may be the only relationship template that you have. The real issue becomes the getting stuck. Spend enough time in any relationship, and you may move in together. You may get engaged. You may get married. You may have a child. And these are really strong practical ties. Stay in the toxic job long enough, and you may get hooked into it in a way that makes it harder to move to another job. Put down those boundaries for a minute. You say, oh, okay, I'm going to go ahead and interact with my toxic family. And you may find that you are now back in the family group text, moving closer to them, or getting pulled into their gravitational pull. The getting stuck is far more important than paying attention to red flags and all the rest of it. Sure, it helps to know the problem patterns, but those aren't red flags as much as they are interpersonal behaviors that should not be tolerated, like being chronically invalidated or mocked or gaslighted or manipulated or betrayed or lied to. This isn't even about narcissism then. It's about a person behaving in an unacceptable manner. And even if that's juxtaposed against some great days or a real sense of attraction or enjoying their company at times, I hate to sound like a cynic, but I guess I am. Judge it on the bad days, because that's the stuff that's ultimately going to come around and harm you. Listen, if you're in a relationship where you happen to like different kinds of pizza, or you don't like the same kinds of movies, or you're bothered by their snoring, or you don't like the same kind of weather, that doesn't make a relationship toxic. But insulting a person or gaslighting them or betraying them, because you do have different preferences, well, that does. How do you not get stuck? Well, you talk about it. Therapy helps, as can support groups or even trusted friends. Do the work on you before you get in too deep with anyone. Know yourself. Learn what constitutes healthy. Trust your body. It's so much more honest, and your body doesn't know how to rationalize. It only knows that something ungood is in your presence, and it sends you signals, and you feel uncomfortable. Pay attention and know those signals within yourself. Don't be afraid to cut your losses. If it takes 18 months to figure it out, that wasn't a waste. 18 years, a different conversation. But even after all those years, you learn something about yourself and about relationships. Learning this, determining you're in a narcissistic relationship takes some time, and that means slowing down. One reason people get stuck is that the relationship hits the accelerator early on when it comes to narcissistic relationships. And as a result, there are deeper roots into the relationship, and that can foster the cognitive dissonance and the buy-in. Listen, relax. Enjoy the first few weeks or months in a relationship if it's going well. Don't make it about a mission to find a bunch of red flags, but rather about paying attention to how you feel. Don't make it about figuring out if they're narcissistic, but rather paying attention to their consistency. Be mindful of justifications and even self-devaluing language you might be using. If you grew up in a narcissistic family or had a past history of narcissistic relationships, slow down. And please, oh please, give it a year before you enter a new relationship after ending a toxic one. With families, obviously this is all harder, but some of the same rules apply. However, it can be deeper work because you are pulled into their vortex of guilt, manipulation, fear, and that child self within you still wanting the narcissistic parent to see you and love you. All of us, if you're watching this channel, have gotten into these relationships. It's about finding that sweet spot of staying long enough to see it, but not so long that we can give ourselves permission to leave without wasting more years than needed. But for a lot of people, they also want to make sure that they don't jump ship too fast, because then you may get pulled back in because you'll believe like, oh, you didn't see it clearly, you didn't take enough time. See it clearly, then get unstuck. And what I'm suggesting is easier said than done, but slowing down is always your friend. Thanks again.